Alright, it is time again for another concept video. If you're new here, I've done this before, 3 times before actually. For The Walking Dead was the last one we did. That was around the time of the actual Walking Dead chapter. I had been making it for a while and then I released it shortly before the actual chapter released. Which was honestly a really big disappointment. I really think they fumbled that. Anyways though, before that, we did Courage the Cowardly Dog. Yes, I know. It's a weird concept, right? But I honestly think they can make it work. If you want to check that out, I'm going to have this all linked down below. And the first one we actually did was Supernatural. So we did Supernatural, Courage the Cowardly Dog, and The Walking Dead. Those are 3 concepts we've done before. And those are 3 concepts that I really think I nailed. I don't claim to be like this genius, like better than behavior or anything like that, but I do like to think I'm creative, and I like to think that when I make these concepts, I stay true to the actual collab, you know, the collab that they're working towards, and really include a lot of Easter eggs and almost like honoring it, which I think should be the most important thing when you make a collab with somebody, is honoring that collab and fully bringing it in to the best of your capabilities, which sadly I feel like behavior Dead by Daylight does not do the best at. I think a lot of times they will have these collabs and all it really is just giving the characters into the game. Like the perks don't really reflect them. They don't really have the best of skins. They don't really feel like they're fully committed in, you know? Majority of them don't even have maps. So, like, a lot of them don't have the killers. Some of them just have the killer. Some of them just have the survivor. I really like having both sides. I understand sometimes when you have one side or the other, it makes sense. But for the most part, I like having both sides. And with all that being said, we have our next concept, and it's WWE. Which I know, you're probably like, how the hell can WWE fit into Dead by Daylight? Dead by Daylight is a horror game. Yes, Dead by Daylight is considered a horror game. It is. But I think the cool thing about horror games, or the horror genre in general, is that you could do whatever you want with it. You could make anything scary. There's a lot to work with this genre. And I think that it's fun to think outside the box, think outside the norm, the typical thing that you would think of, and implement it into this genre and mold it into something great. And with a game like Dead by Daylight, I think at times, whether it's behavior or the fan base, they take it a bit too seriously, to be honest. Like, they don't want, like, Scooby-Doo. They don't want Scooby-Doo in it. They don't want Darth Vader. A lot of people said a couple of the collabs that had happened were not fit for DBD. And in my opinion, I think the only way the game can move on and grow and improve is by thinking outside the box. And this is something I like to do with these concepts, is really find things that I'm interested in and things that might not necessarily fit exactly into DBD and make them fit. Which is why I did Courage the Cowardly Dog. I think Courage the Cowardly Dog would be perfect. At first glance, you're probably like, wait, no way. But I think it would be a great one. And just like right now with WWE, I think WWE would be a great collab. It would be very fun, very whimsical, and I think it would bring a lot to the table. So with all that said, let's get into the survivor of this chapter, which, by the way, there's 1 survivor and 1 killer. So we'll get into who the killer is later, but the survivor, if you've seen the the thumbnail, and if you see the guy staring at you in the middle, the survivor is John Cena. Now, who is John Cena? A WWE wrestler. John Cena has won 17 championships and remained at the top of his game for over 24 years. At the end of his retirement match, as John was heading backstage, he found himself surrounded by a thick, dense fog. To this day, nobody knows what happened to John, and neither does he. But even amid this confusion, John refuses to give up and brings unique perks to the fog that alter the way the game is played. One thing that I always like to figure out with chapters is, when did these characters get taken? How does this fit into the lore, you know? And the way this chapter fits into the lore is that John actually gets taken at the end of his retirement match. You know, he waves goodbye to everybody. He goes backstage. There's maybe like a small tunnel sometimes there. And he's walking there and boom, he's gone. He's never to be seen again. And now he's in the fog, doing trial after trial after trial. But it's a good thing he brings in 3 perks. And let's see what the first perk is. Perk number 1, Thugonomics. When healthy, gain the ability to rap for 10 seconds. When the killer enters within 24 meters of you, their chase music is replaced with the Doctor of Thugonomics theme song for all survivors. And the smackdown fist hovers over them. So, you can use this right away. You spawn into the game, use it. You can use it while running, while walking. You just have to be healthy. So you rap, 10 seconds later, now the perk is active. The killer runs up to you, and typically you would hear their theme song, you know, whatever the killer's chase music is. But now it's replaced by John's, the Doctor of Thugonomics theme song. And as ridiculous as that sounds, a smackdown fist hovers over them. So think of like an icon in a game. You know, sometimes characters will have arrows on top of them. This is what it will be like for the killer. So honestly, I think that is a good informational perk. Like the fact that now you can see that arrow, which means you can see them on top of like walls. So as ridiculous and weird as this perk is, I definitely think it's something that could work in DBD. And it just, you know, it makes it fun. I think it would make it fun. I know it's probably not likely for them to change chase music, especially for the licensed collabs. Maybe they could have a different theme song for the licensed collabs, but I definitely think this is a cool one. And at minimum, you know, you get the Smackdown Fist over them, so you have an informational perk right there. If you complete the performance, this effect ends after 90 seconds, so you get a minute and a half, which is really good, and then you get a cooldown of a minute and a half. So honestly, like, you can activate this multiple times. It will activate for a while, and I think it probably helps because I think some killers with their chase music, it's less, how do I want to say this, like, it's less obvious than others, and I think having this is pretty cool. So yeah, that's John Cena's first perk. That's Thugonomics. Let's get to his second perk. Never give up. After repairing a generator, this perk activates up to 2 times. When you have reached 78% of wiggle progress, hinder the killer by 19% for 2.5 seconds. Now, the percentages, which you might think are weird, when I was first making this, I was looking at his stats, and so some of the stats here, or the percentages that you see, are like his win percentages, his loss percentages, the amount of matches he's had. So a lot of these numbers are implemented through his career, and as you see, so is his, like, the perk emblems, the names. Again, I think all of these are important to add when you make a chapter. It's you're bringing this chapter into your game. You should go 110%, you know? You shouldn't just half-ass it. That's just my opinion. But that's the first part. When you have reached 78% of wiggle progress, hinder the killer by 19% for 2.5 seconds. When you have reached 78% of healing progress, increase healing speeds by 19% for all survivors within a 17-meter radius for 24 seconds. When you are in the final 17 seconds of your second hook stage, extend struggle phase by an additional 3 seconds per survivor alive. All it takes is just activating one gen. You just have to repair a gen. You have to physically do it, though. You have to physically be on that gen. And then now this activates up to 2 times. Meaning, from these 3 abilities, you could pick 2. So for the first 2, you could actually activate each one twice if you wanted to. Or you could activate the first one, and then you want to activate the second one. Obviously, the third one, you can only activate that one time. But if you activate the other 2, you can be like, all right, I want to save, my second option for the third one, which is the second hook stage. I like options. I like having these perks that give you things to do. And this one gives you like, okay, the killer's picking me up. Do I want to use this now? Am I gonna get this? The hook is right there. Maybe I save it for the second time he picks me up. All right, well, I'm healing someone. Let me activate this. Now everyone around me heals, because this can actually work in endgame. That second one, which is the 78% of healing progress, I think would be really good for an endgame perk. So if you want to save that one, that helps. And even the second hook stage, that could work at the beginning of the game when somebody's tunneling. You get tunneled, you're on second hook stage already. Well, now you already have 3 other survivors with you, right? Because you're the one being tunneled, this can help. So in a way, this perk is an anti-tunneling perk, an endgame perk, and a slugging perk if you want to see it that way, because you're increasing healing for everybody. So I think this works really well, and it fits John's character about never giving up. And even though the background is him giving up, by the way, which is really ironic, this really does, I think, give the definition of never giving up, because you have a lot of options here. No matter where you are in the trial, this perk will help you, just as long as you do one gen. But that's John's second perk. Let's move on to his third and final perk. Attitude adjustment. Now this one, I don't think DBD would ever be able to implement this, just because they don't have the technical standard to do it. As we all know, the way DBD was created, they're limited with a lot of things to do. Like for instance, with the Alien chapter, we all thought Alien would be able to crawl on walls and stuff, maybe upside down, stuff like that. And no, it's physically impossible for them to do that. Physically impossible. The way they made DBD, they can't do a bunch of creative stuff. Everyone has to be like sort of the same. So this perk will probably never happen unless DBD 2 exists, but let's imagine this can happen. When the survivor goes down for the next 90 seconds, you see the killer's aura when they are within 17 meters of a downed survivor. This is where this perk gets crazy. Gain the strength to pick up downed survivors. Now, I don't mean pick up as in heal them. No, pick up. Physically pick up, as you see in the emblem of the perk. You pick them up as if you're doing an attitude adjustment, as you see John doing in the background. So, not only do you gain the strength to pick them up, but when you do, yourself and the survivor see the killer's aura, your grunts of pain are hidden, and your pools of blood are hidden as well. So this is for you and the survivor. You pick them up and you walk around with them, Picked up survivors heal 2% of their health progress for every second on your back. So let's just say you pick up a survivor for 10 seconds. That's 20% of healing progress they already have. Now, obviously, they can be healing themselves, but this adds on to that health. I think to somewhat balance this perk, you can probably limit it where if you are being held, you can't heal. And this is just simply, taking you to a different area. But at minimum, you have the automatic healing instead of your own healing, which I think is really cool. We don't have a perk like this at all in DBD. The concept of picking up a survivor is picking them up, healing, and they get up. We've never had a perk, I believe, that physically picks them up. The only time they can be picked up is by a killer. When they're down, the killer picks them up and walks with them. I think it would be cool to have a survivor do that. So I don't know if this will ever be able to happen, just like with any other perk I make or any other concept I make, but I think this is cool. I think this is really nice, and I think these three perks really speak to what kind of person John is, and they allow you to see how he was in the WWE, which again I think is important when you're making a concept, when you're making a chapter. You want to bring in this character and you want to really show everyone else, especially the survivors, hey, this is what this survivor can do, and this is how he can change the game. And I think if John Cena ever came to DBD, he would definitely change the way the game works. There's no way his perks would be just so basic. I think this would be cool. And yeah, so that's his three perks. Let's move on to his skins, which I think are really fun. So if you know anything about John Cena, you know that he always has a new fit. He changes the colors of his fit consistently. Like every year, every few months, he had a new fit, and it was always so cool to see what color he was choosing next. And I think you could do something as basic as you take this first, you see the blue one in the middle? You take that fit and you just have 20 colors of it. You can mix and match, right? You want the first version of John Cena when he first arrived all the way on the left? You do that. I think that would be really cool. There's the Doctor of Thugonomics pick that I didn't include here, but you probably saw it in the Thugonomics perk slide. You could have that. You could even have his roles. You can somehow speak to the licensing of those roles and implement, in movies, his characters, like Peacemaker or something. I don't know if that would work, if that would ever be allowed, but I think that would be cool. I think with John Cena, you have an infinite amount of possibilities. You can do the shirtless ones, you could do the shirt ones, every color you have. You could do everything. You could do everything you want. And, there's a lot of instances where he has bled a lot. And you could do a unique prestige outfit of that blood. A lot of times you see where the blood is just normal. Their prestige outfits are normal, especially for the collab ones. I think it would be cool, especially when this character has bled, whether they've had an episode, a scene, or something. Implement that as their prestige outfit. I think that would be really cool. So these are John Cena's fits. He has infinite possibilities, and he also has alternate skins, which in my opinion also has infinite possibilities. So as you see here, we have Roman Reigns, Cody Rhodes, Bray Wyatt, Rey Mysterio, Randy Orton, and CM Punk. These are rivals that John has had throughout the years, and these are people that you can honestly make your own survivor for with their own perks. A couple of them could even be killers if you really wanted to. But I think they would be cool alternate skins for him, alternate outfits, legendary outfits, right? And I think that these would definitely be something to look out for. And again, they make the game fun when you have all these outfits. And one thing I want to note, I really wish in DBD, when you have these legendary cosmetics that are different characters, that they're able to be mixed and matched with others. I really hate the idea of locked outfits where you can't change the headpiece, the chest piece, all that. I hate that so much. I really wish DBD had a lot more customization, especially with how limited it is. I think having a customization would be cool. So, especially when you have chapters like this, you should definitely be able to customize your character as you see fit. So, this is John Cena. This is the survivor of the chapter. These are his perks, his skins, and now we move on to the killer of the chapter, which I think I really cooked in. I think I cooked with this killer, and I hope you guys like it. So without further ado, this is the killer of the WWE chapter. The Undertaker. Honestly, the most perfect person to be a killer. The most perfect person. And if you don't know who The Undertaker is, this is who he is. For 3 decades, The Undertaker loomed over the WWE landscape like a menacing shadow, spelling out doom for those who dared cross him. Imbued with seemingly mystical abilities and preternatural in-ring skill, the Deadman brings a unique set of perks and skills to the Fog. Now, when I say unique set of skills and perks, I mean it. Y'all just wait what I have cooked up. Y'all just wait. So let's talk about the basics. For the most part, he's a stealth-based killer. He's primarily an M1 killer with an M2. We'll dive into that more, but let's just go over the basics. He has 2 ways to traverse, and down survivors have unique hooks and struggle phases. So these all seem pretty weird, some of them, right? The Undertaker being stealth. I mean, he does appear out of nowhere sometimes. He's primarily an M1 killer with an M2. What does that even mean? 2 ways to traverse, 2 ways, not 1. And then down survivors have a unique hook and struggle phase. Like, what are we doing? You're about to find out. Let's start off with his stealth abilities. So, the Undertaker gains the ability to control the fog or the mist of the trial. I think the fog of the trial is the most underutilized portion of DBD. I think it's not thick enough. It's not dark enough. It's not a vital part of the game when it should be. And if you saw my last concept video for The Walking Dead, one of the perks actually does alter the way the fog works. And I really wish that they made this game darker and more spookier at some points. And I think a killer like The Undertaker would be the perfect killer to introduce this new landscape and this new implementation of fog. So let's see what he does. As The Undertaker moves, a trail of fog follows him. So if you know anything about The Undertaker, when he comes out, fog rises. It surrounds the ring, it surrounds the arena, it surrounds everything. He's walking and fog is all around him as if it follows him, right? So that's the way I want you to picture it. He's walking and he has just a wave of fog circling him and following him behind. At his command, the fog can manifest itself anywhere with a 36-meter radius. So what he does is he'll point his finger at an area, and that area suddenly now has fog manifesting around it. You know how Pinhead will raise his finger and then command the chain to go somewhere? That's what the fog is like. So if he sees a generator, alright, put fog around that generator. Or put fog in front of me. Or put it at the exit gate. Now, why is this important? Why can he do this? This is why he can do this. He gains undetectable within the fog. As long as he's inside the fog, he gains it. Now, when he's walking, while the fog does follow him, he's not necessarily inside of it, right? So he doesn't necessarily have that undetectable status, but if he's inside of the fog, he's undetectable. Applies blindness to survivors. New players struggle with stuff like this, so when you apply blindness to them, like if they have windows, man, that sucks, right? Reveal survivor's aura for 6 seconds. So this is the first time they enter that area of the fog. Until he manifests fog somewhere else. The first time they enter that area, their aura gets revealed for 6 seconds. Highlights generators and will reveal survivor's aura whenever they attempt to repair them. So if I see a generator from far away, I can manifest the fog around that generator. Now I see that generator in a different color, right? Let's just say white. And then if a survivor is working on them, well, first of all, the survivor will automatically be revealed if that's the first time around that fog, right? For 6 seconds. But if the survivor is working on them, then their aura is also revealed. So this is a killer that's really all about seeing everything, because that's what the Undertaker was always like. He was always seeing everything that happened. He heard everything, he saw everything, he would teleport everywhere. That's the type of character that he was presented to be in wrestling, and I think that's the type of killer that he should be. That's the thing that I want to focus on with this killer, is to really present him as he was presented. And that goes in next with this part. His M1 and his M2 ability. So, at his most basic, the Undertaker can injure survivors with his fists. So think of Nemesis. Nemesis has his fists. That's what the Undertaker does. After spending an X amount of time in the fog, the Undertaker gains the ability to use his M2 ability, the Chokeslam. So this is like a power up for him. He has to work towards this power up. He has to spend time in the fog. He has to be traversing around, you know? So once he works for this, now he gains it. Now this is his power up ability that he can use, one time, and then he has to work for it again. So what does his chokeslam do? Dash forward to a survivor and slam them into the ground. I know we were just talking about dashing and stuff like that, and the community really hates dash slop, as they've named it. And honestly, so do I. I think too many killers have this way to dash, but it's a consistent way to dash. I think with The Undertaker, he has to work towards it, right? And his is a bit different. His is a bit different, and we'll see in a bit. If he dashes, he can injure or down survivors. Inflict survivors with blindness for 16 seconds. Down survivors are instantly sent to hell. This is the part that's different than the normal dash thing. And we'll explain what hell is soon, but just know it changes the way the game works. And I like when killers do this. And because I feel like, especially when you're playing DBD for a while, a lot of the games can feel the same, right? And you don't want the games to feel the same. You want a bit of, creativity every now and then, a little spice. And I think that's what The Undertaker does. He's able to do this with his version of hell that we will see in a bit. But this is his M1 and M2 ability, and it's something that he won't just consistently be able to do like Wesker or Myers, right? Or the Pig or Blight, stuff like that. It's not something that he'll be able to immediately constantly do. He has to work towards this. So before we understand what hell is, let's understand what his traversal is with his first one, tombstones. At the beginning of the trial, 3 tombstones and 3 coffins spawn randomly. We'll get to the coffins, but for this slide, we're focusing on tombstones. Tombstones can be manually placed around the trial. So what this means is at the beginning of the trial, you'll have 3 of them that are randomly spawned around the map that you can traverse to, right? But he gains the ability to be able to move them as well. So I believe like Trapper, how Trapper has his perks or his traps around the trial, and he can either use them as is or pick them up and take them. This is similar to that. Highlight any tombstone in the trial and traverse to them instantly. So this is like the Demogorgon. The Demogorgon can highlight something and traverse to them. Now the difference is the Demogorgon has to be at a portal, whereas the Undertaker does not have to be at the tombstone to traverse to them. He can just look at the tombstone and then go to them right away. And the way he does this is burrow into the ground and awaken at a tombstone. Can immediately awaken or slumber. So he has 2 options. He'll go to a tombstone, but he's still in the ground. He can awaken from the ground, from the tombstone, or he can slumber for a bit. Now, what's the difference between the two? We'll explain them. Slumber. See all auras within 16 meters. For every second spent, gain 10% lunge up to 50% on your next hit. For slumber, when you awaken, the longer you spend in slumber, you gain higher lunge potential. And you're able to see survivors and all auras for that matter, so chests, all that type of stuff, generators within the tombstone. So if you spend time in there, you're able to see them. Additionally, for slumber, when you awaken, the longer you spend in the tombstone, the more fog that will dispense around it. So when you leave a tombstone, a bunch of fog awakens from it the longer you spend in there. And in addition, you gain undetectable for 10 seconds. So automatically you gain undetectable when you're in that fog, right? But when you leave that place, you already have 10 seconds of fog too. Break action speeds increase by 50% for 10 seconds. And then add-ons enable tombstones to have a hindered radius effect, increase undetectable status. It can swap aura read for generator regression abilities, and much, much more. I think when it comes to add-ons should be fun. They should really change the way the killer works at times, and it gives a lot of room for creativity. So here you have two options. You can slumber. Slumber allows you to see auras, and it allows you to gain lunge, while also allowing you to gain more fog. But let's just say you want to teleport and awaken right away. Well, at minimum, you'll have 10 seconds of undetectable. You'll have 10 seconds of lunge, or 10% of lunge, I mean. Your break action speeds are increased, and depending on the add-ons, it can fundamentally change the way it works. So that's the cool part with this ability, is you have two options. You slumber or you awaken, and it depends on your playstyle. And I like that you gain this option, because I think with a lot of killers, like for instance, let's just say the pig. The pig has a couple playstyles. You can walk around stealthy with the pig's eerie add-on, where you can see aura. That's what I usually do, and it allows me to be very stealthy. Or you can do the other add-on, which allows you to instantly start the match with everyone starting with the reverse bear trap. So you see how there's different playstyles for the pig? This is similar with the Undertaker. He has different playstyles. You can instantly, lurk around the map, or you can get up right away and just start destroying everyone in your path. It just depends on your playstyle, and I enjoy that type of option when I'm playing the killer. And speaking of option, let's see his other traversal. Coffins. So as we know, 3 tombstones and coffins spawn randomly. Coffins replace 3 lockers. You see how in the background he's standing behind the flaming box? That's a coffin. At random, 3 lockers throughout the trial will become flaming coffins, and it will allow the Undertaker to traverse via those lockers. Lockers can be manually converted to coffins. So if your locker placements are bad, you can change them. So the difference between the coffins and the tombstones is the tombstones can be placed anywhere. The coffins specifically have to be at locker locations, which makes it a bit difficult, but they also do provide their own unique set of skills, which allows you to use both and not only focus on one or the other. Walk up to any coffin to enter them and teleport to another. I've always wanted a killer to do this, and to be honest, I feel like it could have fit for Michael. I know having Michael Myers, by the way, Michael Myers teleport would have been weird, but he seemingly teleports in the movies. Suddenly he appears other places. This would have been a cool way to do that, in my opinion. When leaving a coffin, you get some abilities, so let's see what you gain from this. Ability cooldowns are refreshed. I think because you have to walk up to a locker, a coffin, it should present you with refreshed ability cooldowns. Especially because you took time to go up to that locker, right? Gain 6% haste for 10 seconds. The fog is instantly displaced in a 36-meter radius. So the second you leave there, boom, explodes, fog goes everywhere. Add-ons enable coffins to injure survivors, similar to like how Freddy has it with his pallets. Reveal auras, displace fog in unison. So at the 3 coffins that you have, when you leave one, fog gets out of all 3 of them, similar to also how Freddy has it with the blood spewing out of every single generator. reveal generator progress, and then whatever other things you can think of. So his traversals has two ways to play. And I think it's two ways that you can use at the same time and you don't have to prioritize others. If you want to get to a generator right away, you'd use the tombstones, right? You place them at this area. All right, I'll be back here just to check on this generator. Oh, I have a locker near an exit gate. Let me make this locker a coffin. Oh, we have a locker and basement. I can make that a coffin. Or maybe I put tombstones outside of the basement or in the middle of the map, wherever you want to. I think it enables you to really gain control of the whole map and allows you to use both of these abilities to confuse survivors because now they're on edge. Now they're like, oh my god, there's a coffin here, but there's also a tombstone. Which one is he going to come out of? Which one is he stalking me in? I can't tell, right? I don't know which one, and there's a bit of paranoia there. And I think that's what's been missing from a lot of DBD is this scare factor ability. So that's his traversal abilities. Let's see what his downed ability is, which is the introduction of hell. Downing a survivor presents the Undertaker with 3 options. Yes, 3 options. Slug, hook, hell. We know the first 2. We all have experienced the first 2. But have we experienced the third one? I don't think we have. Let's see what hell is all about. Downed survivors stay in the position in which they were downed at. If I down somebody and I mark them for hell, they can't move. They're stuck in that area. They can't crawl anywhere. They're not hooked. They're at that area where they are downed at. A red Hell's Gate marks them for hell. Hands begin to appear from the ground and consume them. Downed survivors must complete a minigame to remove the hands and prolong their death. Survivor and killer hook related perks do not work with hell. Survivors can assist downed survivors and pick them up. Once their timer runs out, Kane appears, who's the brother of the Undertaker, and sends them to hell. Locations of survivors sent to hell leaves a mark on the trial, and any survivor traveling within a 16-meter radius screams and has their position revealed for 2 seconds. Let's rewind a bit. You down a survivor, right? I can slug them, or I can hook them. But now I get the option where I can send them to hell. So now, I sacrifice the ability to use hook perks. Like, make your choice, right? I sacrifice that ability to mark them for hell. Now, these hands start to appear on the survivor, and a minigame happens where you have to get these hands off you. You have to prolong as much as you can until another survivor comes and picks you up. Because that's what hell is. You need another survivor to help you. You can't do it yourself. All you can do is prolong it. But even if a survivor picks you up, their down perk doesn't work on you. Some perks give you endurance, give you speed. It doesn't work here. It just allows you not to die. And then let's just say no survivor helps you. Well, Kane appears, sends you down, so it's a unique Mori. It's a unique Mori now. And then once you die, that area is now burned. It's burned with the mark. And if a survivor enters the mark's radius, they yell and their position is revealed. So now, not only do you suffer for not having a survivor with you, you suffer for even going within that area. So sometimes this can help. Let's just say you kill somebody at an exit gate before it's opened, and a survivor goes to open the gate. Well, now the killer knows. Now I can teleport there right away, or I could run there, right? So that's the cool thing of it. And I think it's a fun way to present a different option of how to down the survivor. Maybe this will help with slugging or camping hooks, right? Of course, you can still camp hell, but you're hindering yourself, right? And also, the way hell is balanced is that perks don't work with hell. Hell is its own thing. Perks just don't function with it, So I think that's a cool way to do it. I wish more killers had more ways to change the way the game is. You know, at least with Pyramid Head, he has a different way to hook survivors. Who else? I think that's it, right? I think is it just Pyramid Head that allows you to change the way survivors are hooked? I guess the only thing I can think of is Plague, because Plague can like, you know, use her ability on hooked survivors and infect them. And then outside of that, I honestly don't recall any other thing. So this might be the first killer to be able to do that. And it's definitely something that we need a lot more of, which is firsts. We need a lot more firsts, and not to be mistaken with Vecna. We need a lot more killers that do more unique things. But sadly, the way DBD is, as we said, it's out of our hands, you know? But that's his downed ability. And let's move on to his perks, which I had a lot of fun making, and I hope you guys like. Alright, so now we're here at Undertaker's perks. His first one is called Hell's Gate. At the beginning of the trial, a Hell's Gate is carved into the ground. Any generator within the Hell's Gate is highlighted. Its repair progress is determined by the intensity of its aura. We've seen this a bit with some killers like Wraith's add-on, or the animatronics add-on as well. So this is a perk itself. And you get a difficult skill check at 66% repair progress. So similar to like how Onryo has hers at 90%, this one gives you one singular difficult skill check at 66%, which honestly I think makes it more difficult than 90%, because 66% might be more difficult to gauge, like when it's going to come up, and you might not be expecting it. When a survivor enters the Hell's Gate, the first time they enter the Hell's Gate, they scream and reveal their aura for 6 seconds and suffer from paranoia for 33 seconds. Now, I believe I've introduced the concept of paranoia before in like other concepts, but basically what paranoia is it causes survivors to see the killer's illusionary form and hear their heartbeat as if they were directly in front of them. So this is like what Doctor has as an ability, right? But this is implemented into the perk itself. They gain exhausted for 20 seconds after leaving a generator, healing or unhooking a survivor. So the first part is for the first time. The second part is if they heal, if they unhook, or if they leave a generator within this Hell's Gate, no matter how many times they do it, they gain exhausted for 20 seconds. Now, something that I like to do when I make these killer perks is I add an additional part that is specifically for the actual killer, which is this. As the Undertaker, survivors' auras are revealed for an additional second and suffer from paranoia for an additional 6 seconds. So if you are the Undertaker and you run his own perk, Hell's Gate, you get that bonus. Now, the reason why I run this, or I add this to these killers, is because I think a killer should have boosts to the perks that they introduce. The reason why is because they are teaching these perks, right? You can't fully 100% teach something at times, because at the end of the day, you are going to have your own way to go about it, and the person that you teach is going to have their own way. They're going to gain all that knowledge, and they're going to understand how to use it, but it's not going to be fully 100%, right? So I think as a killer, it would be interesting to have their own perks give them bonuses, whereas when another killer uses it, they get, 99% of the perk. So that bottom portion is simply for the Undertaker because it's his perk. He introduced it. He should have a bonus to it. And I really wish they started to do that more, because it would make adepts more interesting. It would a bit encourage that, hey, you can use your own perks, because sometimes you have these killers that they will release with certain perks, but they don't synergize well with their own abilities, which is really weird, right? So I think this would be a nice little mix and allow you to have an extra option, right? So this is his perk Hell's Gate. Let's see what his second perk is. Perk number 2 is the Last Ride. So by the way, with Hell's Gate, that's his submission move. It's a triangle hold that he typically does in the ring. And Last Ride is also a signature move for him. So that's where these names are being derived from. When you down a survivor, this perk activates. Down survivors cannot heal for the first 6 seconds. So the second you go down, you cannot heal. You know how it does in automatic stuff? You can't do that. The first 6 seconds, you're just there. Survivors within 16 meters of the down survivor have their auras revealed for 6 seconds. If a survivor completes a healing action on a down survivor, they scream and suffer from blindness and obliviousness for 66 seconds. And then again, since this is the Undertaker, he has a bonus. As the Undertaker, down survivors cannot heal for an additional 4 seconds, making it 10 seconds. So one thing that I have always thought of is adding perks that specifically have to do with down survivors. And it's always a controversial thing because, you know, slugging exists. And they've done a really good job at stopping slugging and, you know, camping and all this stuff. I think it would be cool to have certain perks that give you a bonus even when you're not there, because you could slug, you could camp these out, right? But what if you just down the survivor and you're like, okay, there's another survivor near me, let me go after him. I know that they can't heal right away. I know I can safely take this chase because of this, but it's a strategic route. It's not me necessarily saying, okay, I'm slugging every single person, that's it, right? I mean, the whole, because of the whole slugging mechanic in the game now, where you are able to get picked up, and if everyone goes down, you're able to get picked up, right? I think a perk like this wouldn't be as controversial, given that we have that mechanic in game. So of course it's gonna be annoying that the first 6 seconds you can't heal, and then if you're Undertaker, it's the first 10 seconds, and you know, maybe it adds more to slugging where you can see the aura when someone goes to save you. But again, we have a mechanic to go anti-slugging now, and there's a lot of survivor perks that when they go down and boons, I think it helps, especially with John's perk that allows them to pick them up. So, you know, this is a little balance that when you introduce such a controversial perk on the killer side, I think it's cool to have a controversial perk on the survivor side and have that little balance. And you know, sometimes some things are fun when they're OP, right? Of course, when they get abused and stuff like that, it's no longer fun. It becomes a thing of like, damn, when are you gonna remove this? But I don't necessarily you know, mind OP perks. But let's move on to perk number 3. Old school. Now this is another move of his. He goes on the top rope and he hits somebody. So you'll see why I named it like this. When you hit a survivor on hook or while they're downed, this perk activates. Hitting people on hook has been deemed a toxic thing, right? It's been something since DBD came out. It's an old tactic. And I was like, you know, what if we make it part of a perk? What if it's no longer toxic? What if it's part of this man's kit? Like, what if you want to run this perk and now if you hit on hook, you're technically not being toxic, you're just doing your perk. But you can also do this when they are down. So if you hit on top of them, you know how sometimes killers will go to do a Mori, but they accidentally swipe? This is like that. So you go to swipe on top of them and it activates. Refreshes your abilities cooldown and gives you undetectable status for 66 seconds. You have these killers that do have abilities. This is good for them because it refreshes them. Now, what about killers without abilities like Trapper? Well, they still benefit from this because they gain undetectable status for 66 seconds, right? So it's a win-win. It covers both grounds. When you have the undetectable status, you see the furthest survivors for 6 seconds. So the good thing about this perk is you can pair it with other perks that give you undetectable status. I like that. I like synergy. I like running perks that benefit on one specific playstyle sometimes. Whether it's vaulting pallets, breaking or vaulting windows, breaking pallets, um, you know, swiping at somebody and having that cooldown reduced. So this is part of that. As the Undertaker, you see the furthest survivor for an additional 6 seconds. So that's 12 seconds of aura reveal on the furthest survivor. I think that's really cool. I think this is a fun little perk that incentivizes you hitting the survivor on hook while they're down. While it's going to seem toxic at first, and quite frankly, it probably will always be toxic. It's still fun. It's still beneficial. You're gaining 2 things from this, 3 things actually, and it's something that helps the M1 killers that don't really move around a lot, that don't really have an M2 ability, that just, suffer from swiping and having to catch up. This is good because now you're undetectable, you gain this aura reveal, and you can honestly, depending on the abilities, this can cause you to win the game. I think in endgame, this can be really beneficial. If you're Trapper and you hit a survival on hook, if you're Trapper and you hit a survivor on hook, and you see the furthest survivor going for one of the exit gates, well, guess what? Now you have undetectable. You can go in there, sneak up, grab him off the exit gate, hook him. Now you can trap the exit gate and go back, So it's a win-win. And you can do this again when you hook the other survivor. So um, you can obviously have a cooldown on this, but overall, I think it's not that controversial of a perk or OP. I don't think, for the most part, I don't think any of these perks are insanely OP. I think they're pretty fun. And of course, at the end of the day, this is just a concept, right? But let's move on to the skins. The good old $20 skins that Behavior loves to do. So let's see what the Undertaker would come with. During his time in wrestling, he had a variety of looks. He had the Ministry of Darkness, the American Badass, the Undertaker with his many different looks. And I think this would be cool to have him showcase. And it wouldn't really change much with his playstyle, right? He's still the Undertaker. He's still this badass. And I think that you could do different colored variants. You could implement a wide variety of like mix and match type things, I think, with these. And, it goes hand in hand with his alternate skins, which is his brother. And he had many different looks throughout his career. And I think this would be a cool way to implement them with The Undertaker by allowing you to mix and match with Taker or Kane, right? So I think these would be pretty cool. These would be badass skins. And overall, it would be a different look to what we currently have with Killers. But that's his skins. Let's move on to the final part, which is the map. Now, the map is something that I care about a lot because DBD does not have a lot of good maps, to be honest. And things are starting to get stale. And lately, the last couple of stuff they've released in terms of maps have not been fun, have not been good. And unfortunately, with some chapters, you expect a map and they don't release a map, and you're like, damn, man, what are we doing here? Your maps are one of your main focuses on the game. Why is it so difficult to release these maps and these variety of maps? I will say the last map they released, which is the Trickster map, that's colorful and bright and cool. I played on it a couple times. It was alright, you know. Nothing too crazy, but I think we need more maps like that where it visually looks different, and that's where this map comes in. I think having a WWE arena would be sick as a map. First of all, I think implementing Hell in a Cell would be cool because you have the ring, you have the cell around it, which enables you to not only be able to get in the ring, but walk around the cell. And I think it would be cool to implement a climbable cell. Maybe put a generator, a chest, some hooks. I don't know. I don't know how they can do it, but it would be cool to be able to climb the cell. You can see in the background at the stage, I think making that an exit gate would be cool. At the top of the stage, I think that would be really, really nice. You know, you have that stage, then you have the ramp, then you have the ring. That as part of the map would be nice. And then, you know, you could implement a generator inside the cell, inside the ring, on the cell, on the stage, anywhere around really in this area. And then you also have a buried alive location outside of the ring, right? Because The Undertaker and Kane have had matches like this. And you could do hidden stuff, you could do a generator there, you could have a backstage area with multiple rooms. You know, you can make this map very layered and have different locations to it. And then the basement, which would be the easiest part, is under the ring because typically they do have stuff under the ring. So I think you could do that there. And then you have an outside portion because his last match was a boneyard match with AJ Styles. And I think if you implement that area into it, I think that would be really cool. So you could have an exit gate there, and then you can have generators there. So you have an outside portion and an inside portion. And I think this would be a nice flow of things and allow you a different of scenery within one map. We don't get a lot of new maps nowadays, and quite frankly, we don't get a lot of good maps nowadays. So I really wish that they would release more maps now with the chapters. It's definitely something that they have to work on, in my opinion, to keep the game fresh. And I think that it would prolong the longevity of the player base, the game, and you know, just the freshness of it. All right, friends, that is it. That is my WWE Dead by Daylight concept. We went through John Cena, his perks, his skins, The Undertaker as the killer, his mechanics, his gameplay, his map, his perks, and we went through everything in between. If you guys enjoyed this, if you guys enjoyed this type of concept, please let me know down below what you thought of it, whether you agree or disagree with certain stuff, what you would add to that. If you even think this could be a concept, I think it would be really cool to just have a discussion about this, you know? That's my favorite things with these is just seeing what other people might think about this and what they might bring to the table. If this is your first time watching this type of video, I'm going to link down my playlist below that features 3 other concept videos, which is Supernatural, The Walking Dead, and Courage the Cowardly Dog. I highly recommend you guys watch those. And again, if you guys have any input, please add them below. I would also love to hear what type of collab you would like in the game because I have some ideas of what else I want to make. But if I see an interesting collab that I am familiar with, I will make a video about it. And I think it would be really cool to continue the series. And I think it would be really cool for all of us to be having these discussions and just keep the game alive for us, you know? Because it is pretty difficult sometimes to be interested in the game for long, especially when that game isn't doing much to keep you interested, right? But with all that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate you guys sitting here through another one of my concepts. It was really, really fun to make this. I will see you guys whenever the next video is. Just a heads up, I am a variety YouTuber, I would like to say. So if you are looking for a new YouTuber to watch that does playthroughs, I have a couple playthroughs that I've done before this, like Uncharted. I have Silent Hill 2 on my VOD channel being uploaded. I just finished A Plague Tale Innocence, stuff like that. And I will be doing Resident Evil 4 soon. So if you guys are interested in stuff like that, please subscribe if you already haven't. And I hope to see you again in another video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Peace out, friends.